Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Jacques Talk. I'm Jacques Doucet along with my friend Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com. Mike, thanks for coming down and
glad to be with you.
Being with me today. Mike is like Coca-Cola. He was the original. He was the first, right? How long have the website's been running?
25 years this year.
There you go. And a lot different back then than it is now when it comes to recruiting. It's become a very big business.
Yeah, back in dial-ups and AOL CD-ROMs.
And faxes, and they still use faxes, but back then it was a different story. So Mike and I, we're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about some LSU football as the Tigers approach the 2021 season. We're going to talk a little bit about recruiting as well, but let's start right off the bat, Mike, with LSU football going into the season. LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. It's been an interesting 2 years for him, like the song from the late 80s, Joy and Pain, Sunshine and Rain. Okay, well here he's on the top of the world right here. He's the coach of the year across the board. And then last year when he was throwing that headset against the Alabama Crimson Tide, things were kind of bottoming out.
You couldn't have drawn up a worse 180 from the previous year. Everything that could go wrong, every doomsday scenario, every off-the-field matter, it just seemed like everything was just not what you would have drawn up for LSU. But I think a lot of people just believe because it was a COVID year, you give them a bit of a mulligan. And I just think with the staff changes, the schedule, with getting Florida, Auburn, Texas A&M at home, the personnel, you've got a veteran offensive line. I think the average age is about 23 years old. You got a defensive line, might be the best depth he's ever had. I think LSU's poised to have a fantastic football season. I suspect in a couple of weeks, Texas A&M will be picked to finish second in the West. I think I'm going to be curious to see how that vote comes down between LSU and A&M for that spot behind Alabama. But I think it might be to LSU's benefit for A&M to get that vote, and that's just one more thing that they can use in the offseason.
Look, yeah, Texas A&M is like LSU entering 2019, right? They finished in the top 10 last year, if I'm not mistaken, and they're thinking this year is the year they take that next step.
Right.
From LSU's perspective, if I take a look at the schedule, you know, you're opening up at UCLA. LSU finally gets to play in the Rose Bowl. Fans have been looking forward to playing in that venue forever. And certainly if you look at the schedule, just me personally, if they went 10-2 in the regular season, I would be happy with that.
I think that's the low. I've been saying that since the new year. Like I said, the schedule, and you look at if you go position by position, you say, what are the weak links? And I mean, certainly with Gilbert transferring out, but you didn't know whether you were going to have him anyways. You know, you'd probably say tight end is your weakest spot on the whole team. But I think both your offensive, defensive lines, you've got Coach Pete's in there, which I know all the offensive players are excited about him. Wide receiving core is going to be as good as ever. You got some newcomers to come in with the veterans at that position. Kevin Falk's running back room is absolutely stacked. I think your starting safeties are coming into focus with Jay Ward and now Major Burns in the program. So I think there's a lot of excitement between not only what's returning, the newcomers, and then the newcomers on the staff. Defensive line responding to Andre Carter, Blake Baker at linebackers coach. And so I expect big things. I mean, opening game on the road, certainly you get past that one, but then I think it shapes up for LSU to really have one of the bigger bounce-back seasons in all of college football.
Right now we're taking a look at the two quarterbacks expected to compete for the starting job. There you see Max Johnson throwing a touchdown in the spring game to Jontre Kirkland. Kirkland had a huge spring game catching the football for LSU. Of course, what we see in the spring game oftentimes doesn't translate to what is going to happen in the regular season, but Kirkland made some nice catches for LSU last year, and he's back for another season. Be nice to see him have a good year. And here you see Aaron and out. That's Miles Brennan going deep to Keyshawn Butte. And Miles Brennan's still there. There was some rumors about whether or not he was going to transfer or leave, but right now those two guys competing for the spot now. TJ Finley has moved on to the Auburn Tigers.
Going to be very interesting how that will play out in fall camp and how they divvy up reps. At what point in August do you absolutely need to name a number one? Can you delay it as long as possible? Do you even come up with maybe saying both are going to play? I can see that scenario. But there is the worst case scenario where you think Miles Brennan might opt to transfer out, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think LSU is going to be secure there, and then you got Garrett Nussmeier as your number 3, and then you go beyond the 21 season, and at midterm you'll get Walker Howard that'll arrive for next season. So the quarterback future at LSU is fantastic.
I saw a fan joke online the other day. It used to be we couldn't get any quarterbacks. Now we have too many. We've got a log jam of guys piling up on campus, huh?
That and what the state of Louisiana is producing, and all these offenses at the high school level. These kids come in now ready to go. It used to be 20 years ago under Saban and Jimbo Fisher, where you had to have a quarterback in year 2 or 3 before you could rely on them, and now you're really scrutinizing kids that are freshmen and redshirt freshmen if they struggle a bit. And some of it, I think, was a bit unfair on Finley last season. But it's absolutely true that a lot of these kids are ready to go at an earlier level because they've been running these offenses, depending on what high school they're at, since middle school. And so that's why you're seeing, like for the class of 23, you've got 3 kids in the state of Louisiana with offers from LSU.
All right, let's take a look at some of the big uglies for LSU. Of course, as you talked about, a lot of new coaches. Andre Carter there will be coaching the defensive line for the Tigers this season, and everyone makes the joke that it looks like the guy could still play. Has kept himself in very good shape. That's Mason Smith, right, number 0 there, who's expected to make an immediate impact.
No doubt, and he's one of the fantastic freshmen. You got Savion Jones, who's already arrived on campus and gained almost 10 pounds in a week and a half from St. James.
Durante Jones, of course, right here, the new DC.
Yep, and so when you add him to what you've already got on the defensive line, I know Glenn Logan has had a foot surgery that I think he's going to be available. He'll be 100% by fall camp. So if they can keep that whole defensive line healthy and being able to rotate guys, this is absolutely the best depth defensive line that Ed Orgeron's had. And you brought up Carter. They're absolutely loving him. And like you said, just a few years removed from being an active NFL player, that gives him a lot of, I say, cred with his players. And it's helping him in recruiting. And I'm told they absolutely love him.
Taking a look at the wide receivers right here, Mickey Joseph looking over his group. And number 10, Jeray Jenkins, we've seen him in some of the clips we just showed, made some big catches for LSU last year. In a season that was disappointing, I think Jeray Jenkins was one of the good stories out of last year. Pretty big surprise story out of the Gina Giants. Made that game-winning touchdown catch against the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah, and he was a kid that you weren't sure if you were going to get anything out of him. He was a little bit of a project. Had another kid that had a great spring. And
Jake Peets right here, new offensive coordinator, looking at his guys.
He's been absolutely fun to watch this summer because we out covering Ed Orgeron football camps through the month of June, and watching him bounce around and the energy he has. I don't know where he gets it from.
Especially with all those kids he's got. He's got 6
in fact, you were there that day where he was coaching the offensive line because Davis couldn't coach yet. He wasn't yet approved. And he was coaching offensive line. He was coaching quarterbacks. He was having to do everything. And it was like, I'm talking to Jamie Howard, who was there. Of course, Walker was there. And he's like, where does he get this energy? It's something to see. And I think I ran into him a week later. He said, I don't even think he drinks coffee. It's something. It's amazing.
Yeah. Kim Mulkey told me she's never drank coffee in her life, too, by the way. Just throw that in. That was interesting. Blake Baker, the new linebackers coach, a young guy. He had a brother that played at the University of Texas. He was an offensive lineman for the Longhorns, and told me a story about Texas came to the Superdome. I think it was 2002 to play Tulane, and Texas had their way with Tulane, beat him down. But in the third quarter, he was running down the field, and here came this little guy and laid it to him underneath the chin and decleated him, and it was his little brother. Texas won the game that day, but little Blake Baker won the war. So.
I tell you what, he's another high energy young coach, and following recruiting, I think a lot of people have been asking me which of the new coaches are going to be really who might be the best recruiter, and he might be the guy. And he's got his eyes on some very stout linebackers all over the country, and I think he's going to land his fair share in his first year.
All right, Mike, and you're so involved in recruiting. Jack Besh, he's going to be a freshman on this year's team. That is Walker Howard, the son of Jamie Howard, throwing him in the football there at St. Thomas More. He's a wide receiver, but he's almost got some Gronk in him, too. I mean, he's a big, tight end kid.
He's a gritty kid, and, he's already, look, physically, he didn't look like a high school senior at St. Thomas More. And I think he's probably about 212, 215 most of his time in Lafayette. And I know there was talk of maybe putting some weight on him, getting him to 230 plus. I wouldn't do that. I think they've gotten off of that. But there's no doubt you're going to do some H-back stuff with him, line him up at receiver, offset him, some tight end type stuff. And when you talk about which of the true freshmen might have an early impact, he's going to be in your top 3, 4, or 5 of those type of guys. He's that special, and he'll grasp the offense really quickly.
All right, quarterback's a big deal in the year 2023. A guy with a legendary last name. It is Arch Manning from Newman, and kind of looks tall and gangly like Peyton, although his father is Cooper, the wide receiver. But tell me about where things.
Well, I tell you what, 2 years ago he was about 140 pounds, soaking wet, and every time you see him, he's gotten bigger, stronger, and you know, and what you're looking at now is going to be different 6 months from now. He's just going to keep getting better and better. Got a bunch of talent around him, obviously wide receivers. LSU just offered his tight end, can make all the throws. You know, been making the tours all around through the month of June. I know Cooper put out a list sometime in May of where they were going to be visiting in the month of June, and LSU wasn't on it. And like I suspected and predicted, that even though LSU wasn't on the list, they would get a visit. And sure enough, they made their way there last week on a Tuesday for an unofficial visit. And you know, everybody in the country's after him. Clemson, you know, Texas A&M, Texas. I think Clemson and Texas are going to be your schools, but Alabama's in the mix as well. And I know a lot of people want to say no Manning's ever going to go to LSU. And
you beat me to it.
They don't like LSU, and I think that's a bunch of baloney. I think LSU does have a chance, and but we'll see. I mean, a lot of it's going to – you still got time, but it's going to be a kid that's going to want to make that announcement about this time next year before he goes into his senior season. And I think they're probably going to want to see what LSU's offense looks like under Coach Peets. Of course, you have Walker Howard that's, you know, highly touted. And while we talk about Walker a whole lot, don't dismiss Garrett Nussmeier. So LSU has a lot of quarterbacks, and then so you've got him and several others in the class of 23. So LSU's going to end up with a very good one either way. But no doubt Manning is getting all the play. I know ESPN has tried to line up marquee games for Thursday nights. I think there was something they were trying to do with Jennings, you know, because they were going to have him and HN. I don't know if that ever came about. They were trying to work something out. But everybody wants some of Arch Manning nationally. I mean, there's no bigger recruit.
Yeah. I think they had a game with him last year on national TV.
Right.
He didn't play a poor game, but he wasn't like a huge factor in the game. I don't think they got what they wanted in that television appearance. But anyway, I'm sure they got ratings, so that's what they were still looking for. Mike, also, let's talk about Eli Holstein. His father was a punter, Scott Holstein, at LSU in the early 90s. I was out here shooting it. Look at that throw. I mean, this kid has got a cannon.
He does.
This is 7-on-7 work the other day at Zachary. And some people are confused. They think that he was at St. Thomas More, didn't want to compete against Walker Howard, and then transferred out. He never went to St. Thomas More. His older brother did. Right.
His older brother did. In fact, during the summer before his 9th grade season, I think I had a picture of him at camp wearing an STM helmet in early June, but he ended up getting to Zachary. He never even enrolled at St. Thomas More. He went to Zachary. Of course, his older brother, now at Louisiana Tech, and was ahead of Walker. But yeah, no, Holstein is the real deal. He's probably 6'3" to 6'4", 220 pounds. He was the MVP of the Elite 11 in Indianapolis, runs a 4.6, has like a 38-inch vertical jump. And he's another kid that every time you see him, he's getting bigger and stronger. He's got a lot of velocity on his throws, can make all the throws, is real big in 7-on-7. I think that's been a big part of him going forward. And of course, Zachary's going to be a team that's going to be real tough to beat, and they're hoping for a state title this year. So I know they didn't like the way last season ended, and I mean, just you can see on that film, I mean, he's got some mass on his body, and he can move it.
Yeah,
he can run. He's not just purely a pocket guy.
Yeah, and he's determined. He's focused on his team goals right now too. He's getting all this national recruiting, but he wants to win one, maybe two state titles there at Zachary. He's got 2 years left with David Brewerton, the head coach there, and those guys won, I think, three state titles in a very short period of time, and looking to add to it. Other guys to talk about, I guess, this year coming up, you're very high on Aaron Anderson, wide receiver from Carr in New Orleans. This is the class of 2022, so a year from now, if everything holds up, he'll be an LSU Tiger.
I've said it, and I don't get many people pushing back on me that are familiar with Aaron Anderson, but I think had he been in last year's class, which had Hilton, Brian Thomas from Walker, Jack Besh, I think he would have been the #1 receiver in last year's class. I just think he's amazing. I say he's like Josh Reed 2.0. He says he's like Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs, and I can see it. You're looking at a guy that's about 5'10", 5'11", with a running back style body, and when he gets in space, he's just hard to deal with. And making some little people nervous. Made another trip to Alabama. Committed to LSU. He's told me he's absolutely 100% firm, and I think he's a game breaker. He's just ball skills. Linebackers can't guard him. I mean, he's devastating. You can do so much with him. End arounds. That first game, Carr Madison Prep, week 1 of the high school football season, is going to be to die for. And he's a kid that the coaches at Madison Prep are scared about.
So when you're committed to a school and you're still making trips, I mean, you meet a few more pretty girls, you get a few more good meals, you get to go to another big-time stadium and look around. I mean, that's just what they're doing these days? Yeah,
and of course, since the dead period ended and you had all these official visits in the month of June, of course, LSU's hosted a bunch. And we're kind of surprised by the number of official visits that schools are doing in the month of June. Usually you want to get them there during the season. But I think a lot of the kids that are visiting now, you want to get back during the fall because you want them there on game day. You want them to experience the stadium. But official visits are vital, particularly in LSU's case. With a bunch of new staff members, it's all about forging relationships. And LSU's been very, very active early on with official visitors.
As far as where LSU stands for 2022 with recruiting, look, they're not going to sign on the dotted line until right before Christmas, and then there's another signing day, in early February, like the original signing day.
First Wednesday in February.
So to speak. So national rankings, LSU's in the top 5, top 10?
I think with what's left on LSU's board, what they have committed now, I don't see this class finishing below 3rd in the country. They're going to be in the running for top class. And I think some of the kids who are committed right now, I think their rankings. We talked about Aaron Anderson. I know one network's out there got him as a 3-star, and that's insane. I mean, I think there's some kids that have a chance to get their rankings moved up because a lot of the recruiting analysts out of state that have to rate these kids are finally going to get on the road and see some of these guys. But I think no less than 3rd in the country. It's going to be a stellar class. And this is one of the banner years in Louisiana where it's one of the top 2 or 3 classes overall this century in the state of Louisiana. It can be that kind of class where 2 or 3 years from now you're saying, like that 2001 class with Spears and Clayton and several others since then. Like this is one of those once or twice a decade type of recruiting year in Louisiana. And 23 is not bad either. We're seeing a run, and it's amazing what we're seeing in the Baton Rouge area. High schools that have not had talent in this area, Liberty, former Lehigh, just on and on. Woodlawn now with several kids.
Yeah. The Estruma running back Moss. I mean, they haven't had a prospect that Alabama wanted, right? I mean, that has not happened.
So now we just need Broadmoor, Terra, Bel Air, and some of those schools to start getting some talent, and it's going to run the gamut. But it's fun going to schools that we've never been to before, and I dare say, and I tell guys in New Orleans this, it used to be Baton Rouge didn't have hardly anything. And now Baton Rouge has more than New Orleans, and it's not even close. Wow. When you include the surrounding area, Zachary, Ascension Parish, et cetera. It's insane.
Another guy I'd like to talk to you about, too, is Quincy Wiggins. This guy came by the other day. I felt like he could have picked me up by my head like this. And, 16 years old. He's 265 pounds. He's 6'6", and really did not play football seriously until last year. And after he went to that lineman camp that I saw you at LSU, his recruiting rankings even soared higher.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast, and he's got loads of ceiling, still got a good bit of raw in him, well coached at Madison Prep, and they're going to have another good team, but he's absolutely fantastic. And all these kids are close. Like, he's close with Emory Jones at Catholic, Walker Howard and Will Campbell at Neville. All these kids are communicating. I think LSU's in great shape with him, but a lot of other schools involved. But he's another kid that I think is going to shoot up the rankings. Even though he's gone where he's at now, I think he can go in higher. He might be a kid that could be a possible 5-star. He's absolutely the best defensive lineman in Louisiana this year.
Yeah, and that's the difference, right? I mean, Kevin Falk back in 1995, he couldn't pick up a cell phone and text whoever else, hey, come with me to Baton Rouge. I mean, he probably didn't even have guys' phone numbers. He probably saw them for the first time when he showed up at camp, right? I mean, that's what makes things different in today's age, where everyone can reach out and touch each other. You know?
They're on Zoom calls. They're playing PS5 games together, doing all that stuff. And
peer pressure.
I think they go to like False River and hang out together. All these kids know each other, and it's something else. And then, a lot of it is like, I think there's a lot of leadership in this 22 class, where you got guys like Walker and Howard that always call like Pied Pipers, where they're the draw. And they're always the guys, planning stuff. Let's get together. Let's go over here. Let's do this. Or let's work out. There was one last year during COVID that all the coaches in the Lafayette area were jokingly calling the Walker Howard Invitational, where all the kids from all over the high schools like, man, do you know Walker's doing this thing over in a field somewhere? And it's that type of thing. And all these kids are involved. I mean, Will Campbell comes down from Monroe to the Lafayette, and he brings in more kids. And I think you're seeing some kids from Baton Rouge go to Lafayette and vice versa. So. But Wiggins, absolute beast, and one of the big stories of this year.
Yeah. No, when I was their age, I was just playing Tecmo Bowl. That's what I was doing for my future. But and also Jake Johnson is Mac's little brother, tight end. He's the top tight end in the country. He's committed to LSU. Certainly, it doesn't look like he would go off course there. He would sign with the Tigers.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's another one. Seeing him and Walker throwing to each other. I think, yeah, you're upset about Gilbert, and you wish Jake was eligible this year. But, I mean, you want to talk about a guy who looks like Gronk. I mean, and he can run. I mean, he is fantastic. I shot a ton of footage of him at the LSU football camp. And he's going to be – he's a 5-star. I mean, he absolutely is. Best tight end in the country.
Good deal. All right, so in closing here, let's get back to this guy, Eddie O. Now, look, I want to say this too. I've covered 3 LSU coaches at LSU. I think Coach O is my favorite to cover. I think he gives you, for the most part, when he can, honest answers. He's going to have to fib here and there because he has to on certain things. But look, he's the most approachable. I think he cares, obviously. But there's a lot of people that are giving other people credit for 2019 now. Oh, that was all Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, this and that. And so if he could really have a 10-11 win season this year or better, I think that would really kind of, solidify himself again.
No, I agree. And you're right about as far as covering him. He's always forthcoming. He doesn't play games. He doesn't measure his words. You know where things stand. He's not going to try and, if you ask him a question, you're usually going to get a really answer that's the truth. And so I think LSU is going to absolutely have a bounce back year of epic proportions. And I really think, look, it's not out of the realm of possibility where, and you're talking in early November, that LSU is a playoff team. Or can they get in as a number 2 team from the SEC? Even if they, let's say, because the schedule sets up beautifully for them, to where even if you were to lose to Alabama, you could be, that team that finishes second in the West, and you're one of the top 4 teams in the country. Yeah.
And as I'm standing here with you right now, I don't know much about UCLA. I know LSU is like a slight favorite in that game. Certainly it would be an awesome atmosphere, but it's not going to be a hostile. They shouldn't be intimidated by the crowd at UCLA. Heck, it might be 50-50 with LSU fans.
Yeah, what's the line we've seen on that? 3-5?
Less than a touchdown, I think. All right, so you come back, McNeese, September 11th. Central Michigan, September 18th. Those should be wins. You go to Mississippi State, which of course came in the LSU and shocked LSU to start last year's season. And then a trip to Kentucky, which could be quirky, October 9th. Florida comes here October the 16th. A trip to Ole Miss, October 23rd. Open date for Halloween, and then at Alabama, November the 6th. Against Arkansas, November 13th. UL Monroe. Terry Bowden, former Auburn coach, now first-year head coach at UL Monroe, and then you close out the regular season with Texas A&M Saturday right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some landmines in there. I mean, you bring up at Kentucky. Ole Miss is dangerous. They're going to score points. You know, there's some things in there, but you can also really paint a scenario where that last game with A&M means a ton.
Gotcha.
To what, you know, what could be your postseason.
All right, before we wrap up here, guys, tigerbait.com. That's where you find Mike and all his stuff. Mike, just make your pitch for your website here.
Yeah, check us out at tigerbait.com, your full-service LSU site. We covered all football recruiting, of course. Football, baseball, basketball recruiting is our bent. Been growing community, and if you're an LSU fan, we want to have you as a part of our Tiger Bait family.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on to our website. Don't forget to subscribe to the WAFB YouTube page. I'm Jacques Talk. Have yourself a great one.